My name is not important. What I went through, that's what matters. And I'm going to tell it to you the way it actually happened. Not cleaned up, not softened, not wrapped in a bow to make it easier to swallow. Just the truth. Because the truth is the only thing I have left that nobody can take from me. I grew up in a loud family, you know the kind. The kind where Sunday dinners last 3 hours and everybody talks over everybody else and the laughter is so big it shakes the windows. The kind where aunts pinch your cheeks and uncles argue about football. And somebody is always in somebody else's business and nobody seems to mind because that's just how it is. That's just what family does. We were loud and messy and complicated and close. Or at least, I thought we were close. I thought closeness was what all that noise meant. I was the youngest of 4 children, and I grew up watching my mother be the most generous person in every room she walked into. She cooked for neighbors who were sick. She lent money she couldn't afford to lend. She showed up, always, consistently, without complaint, for everyone who needed her. And she raised me to be the same way. You give, she used to say. You give, and you give, and you give. And when your time comes, it'll come back to you. I believed her. I modeled my entire life on that belief. I gave. I showed up. I was the one who remembered birthdays and drove 4 hours for funerals, and stayed on the phone at midnight with cousins going through breakups. I was the family glue, though nobody ever called me that out loud. Things together. Quietly. Consistently. That was my role and I wore it like a badge. I met my husband Marcus when I was 27. He was nothing like the men I had dated before. He was still, observant, the kind of man who sits in a room full of people and says very little, but somehow sees everything. On our 3rd date he said something that surprised me. We were talking about family, about mine specifically, and he got this look on his face. Not unkind, just careful. And he said, "You love them very loudly. Do they love you back the same way?" I laughed it off. I told him he'd understand once he got to know them. He smiled and let it go. But I noticed he never fully let it go. Even years later, even after we were married, and he had sat at those Sunday dinners and laughed at those loud uncles and eaten my mother's cooking, he still watched. Quietly. Carefully. Like a man waiting for something he already knew was coming. We got married when I was 30. For the first few years, life was good. Marcus ran a small logistics company. Nothing flashy, but steady. I worked in healthcare administration. We bought a house. Nothing fancy. A modest 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood with a yard that needed work and a kitchen that we said we'd renovate someday. Someday kept getting pushed back, but we didn't mind. We were building something. Together. Slowly, we had plans. We had each other. We had, as I kept reminding myself whenever things got stressful, family. Then things started to shift. It happened the way bad things usually happen. Not all at once, but in slow, quiet degrees that you almost don't notice until you're already deep inside them. Marcus's company started struggling. The industry changed. Bigger companies moved in with lower prices. Contracts he'd relied on for years dried up one by one. He worked harder, longer hours. More stress, more strain. I watched him carry it, and I tried to carry it with him. We started dipping into savings. We told ourselves it was temporary. We told ourselves the market would shift back. We told ourselves a lot of things. And for a while, we almost believed them. The night Marcus sat me down and told me we were in serious trouble is a night I will never forget. We were at the kitchen table. The dishes from dinner were still out. He had a yellow legal pad in front of him covered in numbers. And he looked at me across that table with the most tired eyes I had ever seen on another human being, and he said, Baby, I need you to know where we are. I need you to see the numbers. I don't want you to be caught off guard. I looked at the numbers, and the world went quiet in a way I had never experienced before. Not peaceful quiet. The other kind. The kind that means something has just fundamentally changed, and you can feel it in your chest before your brain has even finished processing it. We were not just struggling. We were in trouble. Real trouble. The kind that doesn't get fixed by cutting back on eating out or pausing the streaming subscriptions. The kind that reshapes your life. I reached across the table and took his hand. And I said, more to myself than to him, "It's okay, we have family." He looked at me for a long moment. He didn't say anything. He just squeezed my hand. And that silence, that long, careful, knowing silence, I understand now what it meant. He already knew. He was just waiting for me to find out for myself. I called my sister first. We had always been close, or so I believed. Growing up, we shared a room, shared secrets, stayed up past midnight talking about our futures. She was the first person I called when I got engaged. The first person I told when I thought I might be pregnant. She knew things about me that I had never said to another soul. I sat on the edge of my bed and I dialed her number, and when she picked up, her voice was warm and familiar, and for a moment I almost felt okay. I told her everything. The business, the savings, the numbers on that yellow legal pad. I told her I wasn't asking for money. I just needed her to know. I just needed to not be alone in it. What followed was a silence that I had never heard from her before. And then she said, carefully, precisely, in a tone that felt rehearsed, "Have you thought about maybe getting a second job? I read somewhere that gig work can really help people in your situation." People in your situation. Like I was a stranger. Like I was a case study she'd read about in a magazine. Not her sister. Not the girl she'd grown up beside. A person in a situation. I got off the phone and I sat very still for a very long time. I called my mother next, because if my sister had disappointed me, surely my mother would not. Surely the woman who had taught me to give, who had built her whole identity around showing up for people she loved, surely she would show up now. She answered on the second ring. I told her everything, same as I had told my sister. And my mother, my loud, generous, warm, Sunday dinner mother, said, "Well, you know your cousin Raymond and his wife have been very smart with their money. They started investing early. Maybe you should talk to them." Raymond. She brought up Raymond. In the moment I needed her most, she handed me a comparison. She handed me a reminder that someone else had done it better. I said, "Mama, I'm not asking about Raymond. I'm asking about me. I'm asking about us." And she said, "I know, baby. I'll pray for you." And then she changed the subject. I don't need to walk you through every phone call after that. They were all variations of the same conversation. Careful distance dressed up as concern. Advice that was really just judgment wearing a helpful costume. References to other family members who had managed their finances more wisely. Prayers offered in place of presents. And slowly, then all at once, silence. The group chat went quiet when I stopped sharing good news. The invitations stopped. Not dramatically. Nobody announced they were pulling away. They just stopped including me. Like I had become inconvenient. Like struggle was something that might be contagious. Like the version of me they had loved was the successful, giving, always showing up version. And this version, the broke and scared and needing version, was not someone they had signed up for. I want to tell you about a specific Sunday. About 4 months into the worst of it. I found out through social media, not through a phone call, not through an invitation, but through a photograph posted online, that my family had gathered for my mother's birthday. A big gathering at my aunt's house. Everyone was there. My sisters, my brothers, my cousins, my aunts and uncles. Smiling faces around a table full of food. My mother at the center, laughing, a paper crown on her head. I had not been called. I had not been invited. Nobody had mentioned it. I sat with my phone in my hands and I looked at that photograph for a very long time. And something inside me, something I had been protecting and holding together through sheer willpower for months, just broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just broke. Quietly, the way things break when they've been under pressure for too long. Marcus found me in the hallway. He didn't ask what was wrong. He looked at my face and he just opened his arms. And I walked into them and I cried in a way I hadn't cried since I was a little girl. The deep, gasping, can't catch your breath kind of crying. The kind that comes from somewhere so far down inside you that it surprises you it was there. He held me and said nothing, because there was nothing to say. In the months that followed, Marcus became everything. I know that sounds like an exaggeration. It isn't. He became the entire world that held me up. He worked whatever work he could find while rebuilding the business from scratch. He cooked dinner on the nights I couldn't. He sat with me through the anxiety and the shame and the grief. And there was so much grief. People don't talk about the grief of financial hardship. Not just the grief of losing money. The grief of losing the version of yourself you thought you were. The successful one. The giving one. The one who had it together. That identity, the one you've been building your whole adult life. It doesn't go quietly. It fights on the way out. And Marcus sat with me through all of it. One night, one of the worst nights, when I couldn't stop asking what was wrong with me, why my family had left, what I had done, what I lacked, what was so fundamentally unlovable about the struggling version of me. He held my face in his hands and he said, "Stop trying to solve yourself. You are not the problem. You never were." And then he said the thing I keep coming back to. The thing that changed how I saw everything. He said, "They didn't leave because you failed. They left because their love had conditions. And you just finally found out what the conditions were. That's not your failure. That's their truth. I want to tell you that healing was fast. I want to tell you that I woke up one morning and felt fine. That would be a cleaner story. But it would be a lie. Healing was slow. Healing was non-linear. Healing was 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And sometimes no steps at all, just standing still in the middle of the mess waiting for the strength to move again. There were days I missed my family so much it was physical. An actual ache, not like a hunger that had nowhere to go. I missed the Sunday dinners. I missed the noise. I missed the feeling of belonging to something bigger than myself, even if that something had turned out to be an illusion. Because here's the complicated part nobody warns you about. You can know something was conditional and still miss it. You can understand that a love was transactional and still grieve its loss. Both things can be true at the same time. The truth doesn't make the ache go away. It just gives the ache a name. Marcus and I rebuilt. Not just financially, though that happened too. Slowly and painfully. And with more setbacks than I can count. We rebuilt ourselves. We rebuilt what we meant to each other. We had always been close. But there is a different kind of closeness that comes from surviving something together. From being each other's only constant during a period when everything else fell away. We became, I don't have a better word for it, anchored to each other. Not in a desperate way. Not in a dependent way. In the way that 2 people become anchored when they have looked at each other at their absolute worst. And absolute most afraid and chosen. Deliberately, consciously, every single day, to stay. That kind of anchor doesn't break. I know that now. Some of my family members have reached out since things improved. I want to be honest about how I handled that. I didn't slam any doors, but I didn't open them the same way either. Because I had learned something that could not be unlearned. I had learned the difference between people who love you and people who enjoy you. People who love you stay when there's nothing enjoyable on offer. People who enjoy you, who enjoy your generosity, your success, your usefulness, they leave when the enjoyment runs out. And you can forgive people for being the second kind. You can understand it. You can release the anger, but you cannot unknow it. And you cannot rebuild the same trust on different ground. I think about my mother's words sometimes. You give and you give and you give. And when your time comes, it'll come back to you. She wasn't wrong. Exactly. It did come back. Just not from where she told me to expect it. It came back from one man at a kitchen table with a yellow legal pad. One man who knew what was coming before I did, and loved me enough to let me find out on my own terms. One man who never once, not in the darkest nights, not in the most frightening moments, made me feel like a burden. One man who showed me that the loudest love is not always the truest. That sometimes love is quiet. Sometimes love is steady. Sometimes love is just still there every morning. Whether you've earned it or not. That's the story. That's all of it. Not cleaned up. Not softened. Not wrapped in a bow. Just the truth. And the truth, every word of it set me free.